All right. Hello, quantitative literacy friends out there. There's been some news about the budget deficit and that the legislature in the US has to approve that we can go over the current ceiling for our deficit. Deficit is how much more we spend compared to how much we bring in taxes and other things. So most years in the US, we spend more money than we take in for revenue. That leads to a deficit, and we have to borrow money to make up the difference, and that leads to a national debt. So the debt is always going to be bigger than the deficit. Now, just this one article here emphasized something here. The deficit over the first 11 months of the fiscal year for 2023, October 2022 through August 2023 was 1.5 trillion, and that's up 600 billion from last year. So I just want to compare those two numbers. The 1.5 trillion, is that a big amount, a large amount of increase compared to 1.5 trillion? And the way we test that is with division. So let's write some things down, give it a shot. So we have the, let's just call it the 2023 deficit is currently $1.5 trillion. And we're also told that that is up 600 billion from last year. All right, double check I got those right. It's up 600 billion from last year. All right, so what does that comparison look like? So we want to do a division. We want to know what part of the 1.5 trillion is 6 billion. Now, to do that, we're going to have to write things out a little different. So this is, again, a comparison with division. So I'm going to put the 600 billion in my numerator. I'm going to divide that by the 1.5 trillion. Now, most calculators don't have a billion button and a trillion button, so I have a couple options. I can just write some zeros or write scientific notation. We've looked at scientific notation here, so I'm going to look at it both ways. So a billion, so let's see. I want the 600, I want that zero to be in the billions position, so I have to add some zeros. That puts it in the thousands position. That puts this zero here in the millions position. And now it's in the billions position. So another way to think about that, I added 9 zeros there. A billion is 10 to the 9th power. Okay, so that's powers of 10, not quite scientific notation because of the 600, but that's okay. 1.5 trillion, so I'm gonna write that as 1, 5, because I want the 1 to be in the trillions position, and then I need to start adding zeros. So thousands, it's now in the millions. The 1 is now in the billions. Now it's in the trillions. So this is the calculation I need to make. Alternatively, from where the decimal point was, I filled in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I could also call that 1.5 times 10 to the 12th. And this number is in scientific notation. So remember, scientific notation means you have a power of 10 times a number. And that number has to be between 1 and 10, but it can't be bigger than 10. So here, this is okay, this is not. So the top number is not quite in scientific notation, but I don't really care. I just need to do this calculation. So I could enter either this into my calculator or this into my calculator, but I don't know about you guys, but in math, I love simplifying fractions, especially when it's easy like this. Like I can just cancel. I love crossing stuff out. It makes me so happy. Cancel. So I can cancel a couple more. See, I do that right. So those guys canceled, those guys canceled, those guys canceled. All right. So what are we left with? We are left with, that didn't cancel, 6 over 15. All right, so that's our fraction. What does it tell us? Let's go get the calculator. So I think the comparison is the same as 6 over 15. which would be 0.4. We'll break that down a little more in a second. Just to double check, the other way was 600, and then I had to put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 zeros, and I want to divide that by a 1.5, so I'm going to do 1.5, and then there I filled in 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 zeros. So this is the way I wrote it the first time. Notice I did reduce correctly because the 6/15 gives me the same thing. All right. So, and the scientific notation, if I type that in, should give me the same answer. So we get this is equal to 0.4. Now I'm going to write that as 0.40, which is, this is 4/10, this is 40 out of 100, which is also 40%, because percent means divide by 100. So what does this tell me here? So let's write a sentence here. The 2023 US deficit is 40% larger than last year's deficit. Wow, that's a lot larger. In this class, we looked at another problem before where they were comparing two numbers, and one number was like a thousandth of the other number, right? So that would be like 1/10 of 1%. That wasn't much of a change. But this 40%, that's a pretty big jump. So I'm going to say, yeah, that is a big thing. So that news site I was looking at saying it's not really a big deal. I don't know. That's a lot of money. I'm a little worried about that. All right, the point of this, anyway, when we're comparing two numbers to try and figure out how much bigger one is than another, sometimes we use subtraction, right? So I could subtract those two and say it's this dollar amount bigger. And sometimes we use division. And usually with the division, we state the answer as a fraction. Like I could say it's 4/10 bigger or 0.4 bigger. But often we use percentages when we're comparing two numbers. And that percent comes from a division. Thanks for playing.